Hello everyone, this is the Crusader Historian coming to you with another video, and this time I'm going to be doing something different. I'm going to review this book called The Defenders of the West, the Christian Heroes Who Stood Against Islam. What this book is it's written by a man named Raymond Ibrahim, and he is a historian of this period, and he wrote a book about, he picked 8 renowned people who he calls the defenders of Christendom, and he talks about them, the state of the areas, and he also, in his introduction, provides a context to what is going on, and he talks about what these heroes had to deal with during their time periods, like what happened before, what happened during their time, and what happened afterward as a consequence of their actions. And at the end, it talks about what the actions of these men did and why they are not taught very much in our schools right now. This is his YouTube channel. I will put the link of it down in the description below. I apologize if it is outdated. This is what he had during April of 2025, and he had done a lot of good videos since then, and I invite you to take a look at them. Since the beginning, Islam's legacy is that of constant warfare. And what needs to be understood is Islam is very different than Christianity. It is like a dark copy of it. On the surface, it may look similar, but they are not. Raymond stated in this book, in The Sword and Scimitar, how Christians and Muslims see martyrs in a different light. In Christianity, a martyr is someone who dies for their faith, even when they can or can't. Usually it's a position, convert or die, and the victim has done nothing wrong. But according to a Muslim, a warrior who dies on jihad against the enemy, both offensive and defensive war, both which are considered equally respectful according to Muhammad, actually no, offensive jihad, perhaps he appeals more, that it makes you a martyr. So a Christian dies as a sacrifice, essentially. A Muslim dies in battle. This makes Islam a rather aggressive religion, and he referenced how he uses primary sources. He is not making this up. If you read this book, he has sources and quotations about what these warriors, how these warrior fights. So that is really that is something to keep in mind. All of these are historically documented. This image about the aftermath of the Battle of Hattin, the execution, the cold-blooded murder of the Knights Hospitallers, that actually happened. Raymond talks about it in this book. And Islam Islam has been advancing, but it is actually the fault of Christendom. Not in a direct way, but it has to do with how passive our leaders are. Our leaders misrepresent everything. They see how we are no longer, our leaders are no longer the people who will defend us as who they should have been in the past. And it had to do with a hatred for Christianity and Christendom, a hatred for the Crusades and misinterpreting Islam. It had to do with the start of the Reformation, how it created a discontinuity and perhaps more importantly, how Christian history is understood, including against its most formidable and persistent enemy. This is a quote, direct quotation from the book. And worse, the evolution of Christianity from its pre-modern to modern to now postmodern forms, which is where we are now, has created insurmountable ruptures between the past and the present that now transcend and have nothing to do with the traditional Catholic-Protestant divide. I will be clear, the Protestant action started this. It started with the idea that the old churches of the East are not very good. So, in other words, a great many Catholics, indeed mainstream Catholicism itself, particularly as defined under the current Pope, keeping with the predominant spirit of the age, disavow their heritage and its heroes as much as, if not more, than their Protestant counterparts. How did this come to be? Well, Protestantism is a huge part. It is deliberately education is bad. It deliberately weakens it weakens Christendom. It deliberately misinterprets Islam's crusades, Christendom, all to protect the fragile ideology of the West, which is democracy and liberalism. It's the naive belief that everyone wants what we have and all religions are equal at best. But this is ignorance and naivete at best, but at worst, it is pure treachery. A lot of our elites would prefer to treat with Arab countries rather than fellow Christian ones to advance their own interests. And this is very problematic and dangerous. But even worse, it follows under this internalizing belief of Christians must always turn the other cheek, which means Christians cannot defend themselves. And thus they make our societies more secular. However, there is one other thing to blame. This is a natural conclusion of a Protestant culture, which is naturally against all older forms of Christianity. And this has great terrible effects because many people assume Islam had lived there for a long time. But in fact, this is gross ignorance. Look at the heroes of Christendom were actually responsible for trying to protect their fellow Christians all around the world. If you take a look at this, take a look at this. This was the world before the rise of Islam, and there are multiple religions. There's multiple branches of Christianity, which the Crusaders launched these wars to help. There's Zoroastrianism, Tigriism, and various polytheistic religions. All of these religions were destroyed or subjugated, and those that are not destroyed are now dying away slowly. In Somalia alone, we have about 100 Christians. The Zoroastrianism is dying out. We have no knowledge of the Arab polytheism, unlike the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Norwegians. Much of the Muslim world, most of it was Christian. There are Catholics, Ethiopians, Eastern Orthodox, Coptic Christians, Nestorian Christians, and so on and so forth. All different Christian sects. And the 8 heroes mentioned understood this. They also understood the world in which they lived in. This was the map of the initial conquests of Islam after Muhammad, before the onslaught of the Crusades. It turned the Mediterranean Sea into a war zone. Muslim pirates taking women for sexual slavery, the Byzantine emperors trying to restore everything, reclaim the Holy Land in the name of God before the Crusades, and so on and so forth. And after some initial reconquest attempts, Christendom fell apart. How? Well, he talks about it in this book, Defenders of the West, and the other book, Sword and Scimitar. The real tragedy is this is only the first wave. Very bad and very destructive. But eventually, they will come all the way to over here. The heroes of Christendom in this video fight in this area, and this area, trying to hold back the tide. And they knew how dangerous this world, this ideology was, coming to destroy their way of life and tear their families away from them. Here is another thing, another word from the introduction. Konstantin Milhevadik, a 15th century Serb who was forced to convert to Islam and made to fight as a slave soldier for the Turks until he escaped, conflated the main enemies of Christendom, the Persians, the Turks, the Tartars, the Berbers, and the Arabs, and the diverse Moors, all conduct themselves according to the accursed Quran, that is the scripture of Muhammad. They have first-hand experience with how brutal it was. And these are the 8 heroes. The Christian heroes that stood against that the video is going to talk about. And I am going to give each of them a basic video. These 8 heroes, they include El Cid, the sword, Skanderbeg, the Lord Alexander, Vlad the Impaler, John the White Knight of Wallachia, Richard the Lionheart, Sir Ferdinand of Castile, Godfrey the Defender, and Saint Louis of France. Each of these great men are going to receive their own video, so please stay tuned. And I am using the book Defenders of the West as the primary source. So yes, in conclusion, I will go over each chapter in this book, and I would give this book a maximum rating with great historical work, gives clear information, and does not sugarcoat information. Honestly clear and very and great courage and bravery to give correct information, even though it would be difficult. To anyone who is uncomfortable with sensitive information with this, feel free to not watch this series. Until next time, thank you for picking this channel, this video. This is the Crusader Historian. Leave a like, subscribe, follow me, and until next time, Deus Vult.